Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 12 and compare it against the iPhone 12 Pro Max and see how both these particular phones hold up in 2025. Now, both these phones, as you can probably imagine, are a little bit older than what they were before. So they're not really like the latest and greatest anymore. They're definitely going to be giving you some issues here and there, but they are still fairly good types of phones for the most part. And I still think for a lot of people, they're definitely worth buying. They're definitely worth getting, but they may not be the most perfect phone out there for a majority of people. So we'll take a look at it for the most part in just a minute, but if you do want to go through and pick up some phones that I would personally recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of these particular devices. The iPhone 12, which came out back in 2020, on the front side is basically going to be giving you a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. And within this type of panel, it is a pretty good looking display and it's a pretty good looking panel for the most part. So I would imagine that if you're going to go through and pick up a panel like this, you're probably going to be getting a pretty good experience. Again, it isn't necessarily a perfect type of experience here, but it still looks good. And I do think if you're, in the market and you're going to be getting a particular device, you're still going to be getting a good type of display. It gets, fairly bright, but it's not anything really worth bragging about for the most part. And it's still, like I said before, it gives you a good experience, but isn't necessarily like a perfect, great experience. But I guess it'll get the job done for the most part. And there's not really like too much else to really complain about there for the most part. But you're still getting the notch up top. You're still getting a 60 hertz panel here, but it is a good looking panel for the most part, if I can call it that. Now, with something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, this phone is a much bigger size display. This one is going to be giving you a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. So this panel is going to be significantly bigger than something like the iPhone 12. So if you don't like a big sized phone, you're definitely not going to like a phone like this, right? Because it's going to be a substantially bigger type of device. And depending on who you are, you might not want to go and get a device like this because it is such a bigger sized phone. So keep that in mind. On one side, it is a bigger type of device when it kind of comes down to it from that particular side. Now, on top of that, this type of phone is also going to be going through and still giving you both these phones are still giving you a good type of experience. But like I said, it really is just dependent on how you kind of want to take a look at it, because both these phones are also going to be giving you 60 hertz panels, and they're not really going to be giving you anything beyond than like 60 hertz in these particular situations. So, albeit it may not be that big of a deal, but it could be depending on who you are. Now, on top of that, another very, very big thing on top of those things is that both these phones are built relatively the same. They're both giving you lightning ports at the bottom, which is great. I love having lightning, and you're basically going to be getting that here, which again, is probably going to be more or less good depending on who you are. On top of that, with this type of device, you're also going to be able to go through and still get a relatively interesting type of layout, because they're both giving you glass backs. With the iPhone 12 Pro Max is giving you a frosted glass back, but the iPhone 12 is giving you a standard glass back. The 12 is also giving you a dual camera setup, where the iPhone 12 Pro Max is giving you a triple camera setup there. So that right there is also going to be another big thing to kind of keep in mind there. But like I said, it also is just dependent on how you kind of take a look at it, because both these phones are still going to be giving you like a similar type of feeling and structure, but the 12 Pro Max definitely feels more like a flagship than something like the iPhone 12. The 12 Pro Max definitely feels a lot more premium than something like the iPhone 12 in almost every single way. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. Now, when it comes down to the camera side, like I said before, both these phones are basically going to be able to give you an older type of camera. They're both like 5-year-old cameras of what you'd expect nowadays. But the iPhone 12 is giving you a wide and ultra-wide camera on the back with 4K at 60 on the front of the back. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is kind of the same, but the 12 Pro Max does kind of give you, 4K at 60 on the front and the back, but it gives you that additional telephoto lens on the back side of that particular phone. So I would imagine that from that side in and of itself, that is kind of one of those big things to keep in mind, because you're probably able to go through and pick up a device from that standpoint that's going to be giving you a relatively similar, maybe better type of experience depending on who you are. So like I said, it's really just dependent on how you kind of want to take a look at it. But if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, I would probably tell you that in a lot of ways, these types of devices, they're still going to be giving you a good type of camera, but but definitely without a doubt, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is going to be better here. But neither one of these are going to be like the best of the best in my personal opinion. So from that side too, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. I think another very big thing to keep in mind here as well is that if you're pretty much going to take a look at both these types of phones, you're probably going to have to take a look closely at something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max, because that phone is going to be the overall better looking, featureful one. But I think another thing to keep in mind here too is that when you kind of take a look at these types of devices, it's always important to remember that these types of phones are still going to be supported with software, at least for the next couple of years. We really don't know for how long exactly, but I would imagine that there's a pretty good likelihood that these types of devices are still going to be here for hopefully like another couple of years. We really don't know for a fact, but I'm probably going to say sometime around the next 2-3 years, that's when these phones are probably going to get done getting software support. But as of right now, they're still supported, which is really nice to have. The battery lives inside of these phones is also very interesting because the iPhone 12 is giving you about a 2,815 mAh battery, with the iPhone 12 Pro Max is giving you a 3,687 mAh battery. Now, in most of my tests I've done, I saw it kind of flip-flopping with the iPhone 12 Pro Max not doing that great, but I would say nowadays they've kind of stabilized, and the iPhone 12 Pro Max is probably going to be giving you the overall better battery life than something like the iPhone, 12. So because of the massive size difference in terms of these batteries, you're definitely going to be getting a better, bigger size battery inside of the iPhone 12 Pro Max than from something like the iPhone 12. So I would imagine from that side too, that's kind of one of those big things to keep in mind there for the most part as well. On top of that, I think another very big thing to keep in mind here too is that between both these phones, with the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro Max, they're very similar when it kind of comes down to the performance. They're both giving you the Apple A14 Bionic chip, but with something like the iPhone 12, you're going to have to remember that that type of device is going to be basically giving you a little bit of a different type of layout, considering that that type of phone is going to be giving you 6 gigs of RAM, where the iPhone 12 is giving you 4 gigs of RAM. So once again, it really is just kind of dependent on how you kind of want to take a look at it and which way you kind of want to go. I think for me personally, looking at both these types of devices, you're still going to be able to get a really good performing phone for a 5-year-old device. Right? If you're looking at a 5-year-old phone, both these phones are probably going to be giving you more or less similar types of experiences. But if you are wanting the device that is going to be giving you an overall better type of experience, then you could take a look at something like an iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that one's probably going to be giving you the overall better type of experience from that particular side as well. So I would definitely tell you, in my personal opinion, if you're going to go down one direction, it makes a lot more sense to go through and buy a device like that, like a 12 Pro Max, than from something like an iPhone 12. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. I feel like in this day and age, both these phones are still going to be giving you a good type of experience. But if you're trying to get the better type of phone in almost every single way, it's probably going to end up being something like an iPhone 12 Pro Max. That's probably going to be the better one for the most part. But even at that point, I don't even know if I'd recommend buying either one of these phones. I think I'd rather recommend buying something like an iPhone 13 Pro Max or an iPhone 13 Pro. I feel like those devices would probably end up giving us an overall better type of experience rather than these ones. And I still feel like these phones are still great and everything, but if you're in the market, I do think it probably would make overall more sense to go through and buy something like an iPhone 13 Pro Max or an iPhone 14 Pro Max or an iPhone 13 Pro rather than one of these types of devices when it comes down to it. So, in my personal opinion, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.